So how on earth do the Vikings stop that vaunted Ravens offense? All of that and more, including your bold predictions here today on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Ooh-wee! You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL, and the show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, and today's episode is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. Big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. Today on the show, I've got a whole bunch of news, actually. We've got some weird roster stuff to go over, but also we have to go over the scary, spooky Ravens. They have a scary offense that's put up, hung 40 on people regularly. Weirdly, the last game they played, they kind of got shut down. So watching that Bengals game and kind of comparing it to some of the other things that the Ravens have done to people, let's see if we can't figure out what the answer is to these Ravens. And of course, at the end, we have your bold predictions. One of my favorite things all season regularly that we do. So that'll all be fun. But first, let's go over the news and no's of the day. So I guess let's start with the injury report. There's also the Garrett Bradbury news. We'll get to that. But the injury report real quick. Michael Pierce was downgraded to a DNP. He was limited with his elbow injury on Wednesday's injury report. On Thursday's injury report, he is now a DNP. Essentially, the reporting was, barring a setback, he's going to play. So I don't know if this is an abundance of caution or a sign of a setback, but it's never really that good of a sign when somebody goes from limited to did not participate. All we can do is monitor, and by the time you listen to this, you might actually know. There might be an actual injury report out. We'll see where Michael Pierce is. I will say he would be incredibly valuable to this game because defending that middle of the field, that A gap, and having a nose tackle that can hold that gap up will allow a lot of leeway for like Kendricks and Barr to do what they have to do, which I'll expand on later. Also, speaking of Anthony Barr and Cameron Dantzler, they were upgraded. They did not participate on Wednesday. On Thursday, they were upgraded to limited with their injuries, I think is a knee and ankle respectively. It's Barr's knee thing, and I believe it was an ankle for Dantzler. So we have a little bit of better news there. Yesterday, we talked about Jonah Williams, the defensive end from the Rams that they did a waiver claim on. He did not pass his physical. He's got a hernia, so that's kaput. Instead, they signed a guy named Nate Orchard to the practice squad, but it's still going to be the Kenny Willekes and Patrick Jones show. And then there's the big thing, which is Garrett Bradbury going on the COVID-19 IR list. It sounds like genuinely got COVID. He is vaccinated. He was vaccinated in the spring. Team posted pictures of it. So it's a breakthrough case, but it sounds like he's actually symptomatic. So in the best case scenario, Bradbury could get a negative test on Friday, a negative test on Saturday, and technically he could, charter something out and get to the Baltimore game, I believe. But it has to be like 2 negative tests, 24 hours apart, and no symptoms and all that stuff. And that only applies to you if you're vaccinated. So I think technically he could maybe make it. I might even be wrong about that, but it sounds like he's got a symptomatic case. So he's getting genuinely sick and he's going to be out. Same thing as what Cameron Dantzler had. So that means it's probably Mason Cole time. And this is why you traded a 6th round pick for Mason Cole. So he could fill in this particular scenario. And a lot of people have been asking for Mason Cole because they don't like the pass block grades and stuff. And they don't like the way that he gets kind of walked back in the pocket a lot, which I've talked about a lot and how it doesn't bother me as much. And I get more excited about the run play stuff than other people do. So that's why I'm more high on Garrett Bradbury than everybody else is. I don't have a lot on Mason Cole. I liked him. I liked the trade when it happened. I thought he had a good preseason. So we'll see if he can do anything. The big problem with Mason Cole, and it's kind of a big one for a center, is he can't snap. The Cardinals had horrible snapping issues. He had terrible snapping issues when he was at Michigan, terrible snapping issues at the Senior Bowl. He just is not a very good actual snapper of the ball as an actual blocker and stuff. He also had some issues in Arizona, snapping and then setting up too slowly. His hands would be late, and then that would cause problems. So that's why I advocated a move to guard, but obviously we don't have that luxury. There was also some speculation from Chris Thomason. I don't know if he was reporting based on knowledge or if he was just kind of saying this is a guy that I thought, but he thought that Dakota Dozier could be elevated for this game. He's been elevated twice off of the practice squad, but he could be a COVID elevation. When there's a COVID-19 thing, you get another, you kind of can be exempt from those limitations. So Dakota Dozier might do it, and he does have some experience at center as well. I don't think they would do that. I mean, Mason Cole was the second team center, so like I can't imagine that they would just suddenly not put in the guy that was like on the second team and did well at that job for the whole preseason. Like I feel like he earned that job. The other thing that there was a lot of speculation on that I guess I just want to quickly explain is people were worried about Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins is unvaccinated. So I guess let's go over kind of what the protocols would be that and like, you know, where there would be any opportunities for him to be a high risk close contact. If he were a high risk close contact, if he were, say, unmasked in the same vicinity as Garrett Bradbury for long enough and the contact tracing went off, he would be forced to sit out for a minimum of 5 days, therefore missing the game. It'd be the Sean Mannion show. And that obviously would be terrible. So here's what I think. Practicing together, huddling, snapping, all that stuff does not count as high-risk close contact by the league because it all happens outdoors. Meetings also probably don't count as close contact. If you remember when Kirk Cousins was out during training camp and he had that infamous press conference where he said he'd build a plexiglass box, and we'd all made fun of him for that because it's subjectively hilarious. But basically the gist of that quote was, I will, attack and do everything within the protocols to a ridiculous degree of like meticulousness. And I believe Kirk Cousins when he says he will be very meticulous about something. So my guess is that all the meetings that Kirk Cousins is involved in, because he is not vaccinated, are probably now in rooms that are big enough to not get dinged by the close contact protocol like he did in training camp. So probably not, although by the time you are listening to this show, you might know more than I do. And if he is not taken out as a high risk close contact by Friday afternoonish, then he's going to be fine to play. The other thing that's interesting to note, or important to note, I would say, is that I believe the rest of the offensive line is vaccinated, which means that they aren't going to be subject to all of this. And it would be nice if we didn't have to talk about that with Kirk Cousins either, but here we are. So enough about all that, though. Let's talk about the actual Ravens. Attacking the Ravens on defense will be difficult, I think, especially with Mason Cole, who struggles to snap in the shotgun. You might want to go under center a little more, and that does kind of change part of your playbook. But I guess listen more to Kevin Ostreicher on that from yesterday. If you go listen to yesterday's podcast, we crossed over for most of it kind of talking about those matchups. They aren't very happy with their tackling. They aren't very happy with their interior. And I think the Vikings might be able to power up on them. Go jumbo, go three tight end and punch him in the mouth. That I feel like I'm advocating for that like every game, but it always feels like just the zig of like all these defenses are so speedy that it feels like the zig to their zag. But yeah, that's probably what I think. And then, test their corners downfield if you can. But I want to focus more on the offense. The offense fascinates me. That Ravens offense is incredibly interesting. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But first, this episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's is much more than just a place to get tasty and affordable food. It can be a symbol. It can be a place to be together, right? It can be a place to hole up on your road trip, get out, stretch your legs, grab a McGriddle. It can be a place I've cured a number of hangovers using McDonald's breakfast. When we were in high school, it would always be the thing. We would go out, and there was McDonald's by the school. We would go out, get McDonald's drive-thru, come back, do homework together. And it can be that kind of place. So thank you so much to our friends at McDonald's. I'm loving it. Once again, thank you all so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Let's talk about the Ravens. So the Ravens are an incredibly unique team. I highly recommend, I never recommend pressers. I highly recommend going and listening to Andre Patterson's press conference from, I believe it was Wednesday. he was asked questions about defending the Ravens, and he went really, really deep on what makes them unique. And basically what he said, so the Ravens are an option team, and there are a couple of zone read option teams in the league. The Ravens are a power option team, and that's very different. He basically described the difference between defending somebody like Kyler Murray, who will make scrambly plays in the pass game, versus Lamar Jackson, who will run a lot more on designed run plays. Now, the Cardinals do run designed run plays, but they're more zone read, where you can say, all right, this guy has the running back, this guy has the quarterback, everybody be sound on their rules, and we can stop the option that way. And then you kind of tweak the way you fit everything up so that you have all your gaps covered. The Ravens, a lot of it is run pass options as well. So whoever has the quarterback isn't just a running back. He will pull up and throw. And then sometimes he is a running back, and he's one of the most dynamic runners in the league. So you have to have somebody assigned to, I wouldn't call it a spy, because a spy will, keep his eyes on the quarterback throughout the coverage, and a spy is something you do for like a run around scramble improv thing, which Lamar Jackson does, but that's not, I don't think, the main threat. Once he's in the pocket, the main threat has to be the arm and coverage. But basically, you have to be very disciplined about how you fit everything up. And so to kind of prepare for all this, I watched their game against the Bengals, where the Bengals really shut them down, and then their game against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are not good on defense. And so kind of like, how does a good defense do it? Has a bad defense do it, right? And a big difference with the Bengals is that they crowded the line of scrimmage a lot more. And that allowed their linebackers to be a little bit more versatile and mobile. You could do stuff like assign your linebacker to the A gap on a halfback dive. And if he hands off, you have the A gap. And if he doesn't hand off, and instead Lamar Jackson is running around to the outside and it's a power play, now the linebacker has to run all the way out around to the side of the play and, play contain over there, or play a gap kind of over on the outside. That is something you can do if your halfback, or if your linebacker doesn't have to attack the gap, the A gap with a lot of vigor. If he can stay there, watch the exchange happen, then attack the gap. And if you have somebody who is quick enough at reading it and explosive enough to do it, and I think Barr and Kendricks both check those boxes, you can kind of allow them to cover a gap right in the middle and then a gap way out on the outside, and kind of kill two birds with one stone. That is going to be really, really important, as well as squeezing outside gaps and stuff, and just kind of being disciplined in where you are. The thing about zone read is it's zone blocking, which isn't as good as power at getting numbers advantages. Zone blocking is great at getting angle advantages, but it's not as good at getting numbers. It's not pulling guys across the formation to turn a 4v3 into a 4v4 or whatever, or a 5v3 or whatever. That's what power does. So what you have is an option where you either have a normal power play, or the quarterback, with like lots of pulling linemen and stuff, not unlike what the Cowboys threw at us, which we did very well against. Or the quarterback keeps the ball and then he becomes a running back, and that's Lamar Jackson, and that's scary. And he can also pull it up and throw a shot play or something like that. And that's how they enable a lot of their shot plays. So when I scout a team, there is the two questions I kind of ask about their offense is, what are their shot plays? What are their gimmies? For the Vikings, their gimmies are slants. They are like quick hitch kind of spacing concepts. They're spread offense, sort of West Coasty things. And what the Vikings are trying to make their gimme into is a bootleg where you throw to the sliding underneath guy, like the bootleg that goes to Luke Stalker or whatever. But because the bootleg is such a deep threat play, all the coverage is backed off. You have a bunch of space, you get 5 yards out of it, right? And also screens and like smoke screens and stuff that are all these kind of quick hitters. That's what's supposed to be their gimmies paired with a zone run game. That's what's supposed to be the thing that you need 4 yards. It gets you 4 yards on every first down. You can set up and have, a nice 2nd and 6. And then their shot plays, the Vikings shot plays are bootlegs. Their shot plays are go routes down the sideline, stuff like that. So for the Ravens, their gimmies are these option runs. And if you can shut down these option runs, they kind of become an all or nothing offense. And that's what the Cincinnati Bengals did. They shut down those option runs, and then the shot plays worked sometimes, didn't work sometimes. But without the gimmies, it kind of meant, all right, we have to hit a 35-yard pass or we're punting. And you can only hit that so often. So what you can do is either try to emulate what the Bengals did. The problem is the Ravens have their own tape on the Bengals too, and they're probably going to change some things that, adjust the way the Bengals played. I don't think you can copy them blow for blow and just expect the same result, right? But the shot plays, if you can shut down the shot plays and then they're just an option run team, well, now it's like you're playing Army. And you can maybe shut things down from there. So if they can't get that 35-yard pass, then all you need to do is get them behind the chains and they fall apart. So if you can stop both, then congratulations, you're the greatest defense of all time. But if you want to pick one or the other and really focus on it, you can do that. So I think the Vikings should play quarters with, cover 4. That's 4 deep defenders, right? And I criticize the Vikings a lot for leaving their corners in man coverage against the Cowboys and against like Hollywood Brown and stuff. That might still be tough, but Hollywood Brown's major threat is as a deep ball guy. So I'm kind of okay with them playing soft. Don't play soft against Amari Cooper. He's too good of a route runner. Play soft against Hollywood Brown. He's kind of a burner. He's kind of an all or nothing guy, right? He's a shot play kind of dude. And they try to get him involved with, jet sweeps and stuff too, which is all part of the option game that you just have to be really disciplined about. It's difficult to like explain the specifics of it, but basically it comes down to trust. The Vikings defenders have to trust each other. And if you don't trust each other, then you can't play this sort of complementary style of defense, which is what Zimmer's always wanted to play the whole time he's been here. If you have, if your responsibility is the running back, you have to attack that with vigor. Like you have to be 100% fully committed to that. And sometimes that will mean running directly past Lamar Jackson without checking if he has the ball or not. And to do that and to have the commitment to it and to have the explosiveness to it that you need to have to make the play at all, you cannot be distracted at all by the possibility that Lamar Jackson has kept the ball. And you have to understand that is somebody else's job. And if you don't trust that that guy's going to do their job and you're trying to make the play instead, then you're the one who ends up not doing your own job. That's what the Chiefs ended up doing. There was a lot of Chiefs players trying to make the big play, guessing wrong, and then being, caught out of position. And then you kind of have 2 Chiefs players chasing down Lamar Jackson and he doesn't even have the ball, when it's like, well, that was one guy's job and the other guy shouldn't have joined him. You have to trust each other completely blindly to do that. And that's, in split second decisions, it sounds it's a lot easier said than done, right? So that's the challenge the Ravens face. I don't think the Vikings have a shutout in them on this one. I don't think they have a 13-point game in them here. The Ravens are going to score. The Vikings are going to have to keep up. That's how you have to go win this game. But this has all been too serious. Let's do some bold predictions and have a little bit of fun. But first, let's talk about everybody's favorite holiday to stuff themselves full on, Thanksgiving. It's around the corner and all that good food, all those good treats are great and we all get stuffed, but holy crap, that's a lot of calories. That's why this is the perfect time for Built Bars. It's the new holiday dessert. You can feast on something delicious and you don't have to feel bad about it. Now look, on the holiday, a slice of pie, we're all going to forgive ourselves for that. But afterwards, you're going to eat like 19 more. One of those slices of pie has like 300 calories. That's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories with only 4 grams of sugar and a ton of protein. They're all covered in 100% chocolate and they come in a bunch of delicious flavors. Raspberry Built Bar instead of raspberry pie, coconut cream pie, get a coconut Built Bar. It is a great option when you're hungry and there's much worse options in the fridge and you want to keep your discipline. You're trying to lose or maintain weight. You're trying to do keto or whatever. There will also be new limited time flavors all month. So check Built.com regularly. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday is going to be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. So go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15. You get 15% off of your order. That's promo code LOCKED15, all one word, for 15% off at Built.com. Let me also talk to you about Grambling. BetOnline is back and better than ever. It is your number one spot for all Grambling action. Their new and updated site has all sorts of great stuff. I love the live betting. I had a whole bunch of fun trying to manipulate the Jets-Colts game, and it made that game watchable for me. I mean, that game was awful, right? But they almost came back and covered that 10-point spread. That was electric. I love that kind of thing, from basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, UFC, even your favorite Vegas casino games. You can bet on all of this stuff. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts now. Let us begin with the bold predictions. First, we got to go back and look at last week's bold predictions, see if any of these hit. James Kunow said Ryan Connolly returns a 2-point conversion interception back for a pick 2 against the Dallas offense. I said I'd take any pick 2. Didn't matter. There were no pick 2s. Ted Glover said Kirk will throw more touchdown passes to the Cowboys than he will the Vikings. We did have one Vikings touchdown, but no defensive touchdowns, so that one did not go. Tony Robe said Eric Kendricks' helmet pops off more times than Greg Joseph field goal attempts. I did not find any Eric Kendricks helmet popping off. Correct me if more than 3 of them happened, but I don't think this one hit. Jake Smith said that Justin Jefferson's receiving yards total will be the mirror of CeeDee Lamb's. Remember, that would be like if one gets 19, the other gets 91. And unfortunately, so I basically look, if somebody goes over 100, you're in a really, really rough spot. So CeeDee Lamb got 112 yards. That means 211 it should have been for Justin Jefferson. It was 21. So I was actually thinking about kind of saying, okay, we'll just take the last 2 digits, and if that happens, it happens. And that would have cashed. You got close, buddy. Like, too close for comfort. But the way we kind of figured it out beforehand, we didn't quite get there. Joel Erickson said Brian O'Neill and CJ Ham will both have a receiving touchdown. We just had the one for Adam Thielen. Nate Miller said that Kirk Cousins will have more rushing touchdowns than anybody on the Cowboys. I don't remember if any of their touchdowns were rushing. I think both. Yeah, there was the Cedric Wilson and then the one at the end. So those were zeros all over. So we had a tie there. But interesting that they had no rushing touchdowns. And then I think I had the worst one in all of this. I threw my hat in the ring and said Thielen, Osborne, and Jefferson all have 50-plus yard touchdowns. Not quite. So let's move on to week 9. The first one comes from Focus Fuller, who said that Kirk catches a pass for a first down. There were a million of these that said that there would be some kind of double pass. Dalvin Cook passes for a touchdown. Somebody said that like Amir Smith-Marset gets his first touchdown, but it's a pass and all this stuff. I went for Kirk catching a pass for a first down. Now, touchdowns count to me as first down. So if Kirk Cousins catches a Philly special, that count, on the goal line, that counts for me. But Kirk catches a pass for the first down. That one feels A, the funniest, and B, the most likely. So we're taking that one. IITOI, I don't know how to say your name, says Lamar finishes with negative rushing yards. That would be utterly insane. I mean, Lamar is good for like 50 yards a game, and he gets rushing yards. Like, statistically, his rushing profile looks like a running back. So it's not one of those things where, Tom Brady gets negative rushing yards because he'll kneel a game out. Lamar Jackson will get 0. That means we shut them down. This would be an insane outcome, which makes it perfect for the bold prediction segment. Kyle Slaby, our reigning champion, only person to get one of these, says Latavius Murray revenge game. He gains more rushing yards and more receiving yards than any Viking individually in those categories. So the rushing feels very plausible. That's probably not a bold prediction, right? Like, he's one of the bell cows for the Ravens, and somebody's got to lead the game. The receiving yards would be completely insane, right? Because, you get a 100-yard game from anybody, and it's so much more difficult for a back, especially with like Lev Bell on the team, and he's like the receiving back, right? That would be pretty insane for him to get a lot of yards off of checkdowns or something. It'd have to be something weird, like a 3rd and 36 in a 2-minute drill, and then he gets 35 yards receiving, and then, the Vikings offense, like, craps its pants or something. It'd have to be something like that. Vikings France says Dakota Dozier is activated from the practice squad and allows 0 pressures. So it does kind of sound like we're going to get a Dakota Dozier activation. So that's not the bold part of this. They just need a body, right? Because they're missing one backup because, Mason Cole now becomes a starter. If he goes down, somebody's got to snap it. I'm going to guess that they don't want Wyatt Davis to do that after taking like 4 reps as a center in training camp, the beginning of training camp. So Dozier, I'm going to guess, is activated as the backup center to Mason Cole. So what I need for this is that he needs to play the whole game. Or most of the game at least, if Mason Cole gets hurt. But if he comes in, if Dakota Dozier comes in for 2 drives and doesn't give up a pressure, I'm not giving you that. He needs to play like most of the game, if not all of it for this. But if he does play a whole game and allows 0 pressure, yeah, that is an insane outcome, and I'm giving you the bold prediction. Skull or whatever says Patrick Jones will get a sack in his first career drive. So a lot of people will put it in the bold prediction, so-and-so gets a sack, right? Kenny Willekes gets a sack. We're going to see Mackenzie Alexander, or whatever, right? Cameron Dantzler gets a sack, that kind of thing. And that's just not quite spicy enough. It's maybe bold, but not quite spicy enough. I love Patrick Jones getting a sack in the first drive. I like that. It's going to cash or not cash quickly. We'll know about it, and then we can move on. James Kunow says another defensive delay of game penalty occurs, allowing Justin Tucker to kick a 60-plus game-winning field goal. So I won't hold you to the Justin Tucker kicking a field goal part. Any defensive delay of game that leads to a score, I will take here. And when I say leads to a score, and obviously this is a response to Mike Zimmer trying to take a timeout he didn't have in that Dallas game, defensive delay of game penalty, and then that ended up like enabling the big conversion at the end that led to the fade touchdown, and they were going to like totally kick a field goal there. Very frustrating. So if they do it again, and that leads to a score. And I'm not talking they did it on 1st and 10 and some defensive delay of game happened, and then they convert a 1st and 5, and then that's a scoring drive. No, I mean like it needs to be directly responsible for the score. It needs to be a 4th down that then gets turned into a 1st down, or it needs to bring them into field goal range or something like that. It needs to be responsible for the score, and then I will give that to you. So the line for this is Vikings +6 right now. We're 6-point underdogs. So basically Ravens by a touchdown with a point in favor of the Vikings. That's pretty heavily favored for the Ravens. The market's pretty down on the Vikings, and I think they kind of deserve that. So we'll see you, whatever happens, we'll see you on the other side, right? There's still 10 games to go, and I'm going to be here with you for all of them, no matter what happens. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the Peacock and Williamson podcast, a daily show just like this one, dealing with everything in the national part of the NFL, probably talking about the Aaron Rodgers thing and the Henry Ruggs and all the other crap going on in the league, as well as, the Odell Beckham situation. That's crazy. I'm sure there's a lot to listen to over there. So go check that out. I will see you all next week. And as always, Skull.